Ramon Bain, who had once been his longtime publicist. So he had lawsuits coming from all over the place. So there's economic pressure, there are lawsuits, there is the need for cash flow, number three. And Michael always wanted to do whatever he did bigger and better than anybody else. So there was this sort of outsized ambition he had to give his fans the greatest comeback that he could give them, the greatest show that they would have ever seen. And he talked about that any number of times. But what we discover in this text, before you judge me, is a storyline that heretofore I think hasn't really been known, which is that Michael's biggest reason for getting back on the stage, Peter, was his kids. His children had never seen Daddy perform live. They had certainly seen him in videos and all kind of videotape, but they had never seen Michael Jackson do what he did better than anybody else live on stage. So one of the reasons why he decided to make this comeback was for his kids to see him do his thing on stage, and he took his kids to London with him. He wanted them to get every piece of this. He took the kids to London just for the announcement. The primary reason amongst those other issues was his kids seeing him back on stage.
You said so much earlier that I just want to keep unpacking here. You mentioned his drug dependency, which I imagine is what you would say was one of his own self-inflicted wounds in terms of him taking these drugs to treat himself, but which ultimately led to his demise. So, Tavis, when did this all begin for Michael Jackson? When did his drug dependency begin?
It started after that Pepsi commercial years ago, back in the 80s. He was doing a Pepsi commercial, and he was burned. If you recall, fire broke out on set. Some pyrotechnics sort of blew up. His hair and face caught on fire, and so he started taking the painkillers, we believe then, to anesthetize the pain brought on by that horrific accident. And then it just got worse. And at night, when he couldn't shut his mind down for all that he was thinking and all the pressure he was under. Now, I say all the time, you have to be careful what you ask for. I want to be clear about the fact, and his fans are clear about this, that Michael was not a recreational drug user. He lived a clean life. He ate clean. He took care of himself, not unlike Prince, not a recreational drug user. But it is interesting that both of them are gone too soon, both in their 50s, both born the same year, and both with a drug dependency that started trying to deal with pain. Michael from that accident, and Prince from having a horrible hit.
Oh, it's from my bank.
But you get all this stuff, and as you well know, these days, everybody, there's so many books and documentaries and storylines about opioid addiction. It's a big story now, not so much back then when these guys got hooked on it.
And as Michael is leaning on drugs to help him, what does that support look like that he was getting, people from his inner circle, his family?
It looks like this. When you become the king of the world, when you are the biggest musical star on the planet, it is difficult, I learned in the research of this text, for people to say no to you. Michael might still be alive today if Conrad Murray had more constitution, more ability, more agency to say no to Michael Jackson. But when Michael Jackson is pressing you, and Michael's not the only example, there are any number of other examples, but when someone of his stature is demanding something, it's hard for you to say no to them. But conversely, it was hard for Michael to say no to AEG when they started pressing for 50 concerts. He was a non-confrontational guy. In the last 16 weeks of his life, he had no fewer than five managers on one day in this 16-week period. One day, there are 3 different press releases put out by 3 different people, all under contract, claiming to be Michael Jackson's manager. So he was so non-confrontational that he didn't want to deal with certain things, and the people in his universe who Michael demanded certain things of didn't have the agency to say no to him. And so what I hope to get to in this text is to move beyond his iconography. We get so caught up in his being an icon, indeed he was, but we get so focused on the iconography that we lose our way into Michael's humanity, and I hope that's what this book starts to bring to life.
Well, let me push back a bit on that. And I don't mean to sound like a jerk. I'm hearing what you're saying, but this was a grown man, 50 years old, with agency over his own life to some extent. I just want to be clear, and ask you this. I mean, how much responsibility do you put on him for what he did?
Oh, that's not pushing back at all. As you recall, earlier in this conversation, I made it abundantly clear. I repeat, Michael made mistakes. He had wounds that were self-inflicted. He made bad choices. All I'm saying is that it wasn't his bad choices alone that brought on his demise. It was corporate greed as well. So there's no doubt about the fact that Michael is responsible, that Michael, controlled his own life. No doubt about that. But I would ask you this. How, since your question was about what responsibility Michael has, I think I've answered that. My question is, what responsibility do we bear? What do we as a public bear when we throw all that we have thrown at a child star and we see in front of our eyes the issues that creates? We steal his childhood from him for the source of our entertainment. What role do his parents play? What responsibility do they bear for choices that they made? All I'm saying is it's not Michael alone. Yes, he had agency. Yes, he was in control. But corporate America plays a role in this. His fans play a role in this. All of us play a role in snatching from this kid a childhood he never had. And as an adult, he's just trying to get that back, which is impossible to do. You can't turn back the hands of time.
If you're just tuning in, my guest is Tavis Smiley, best-selling author and co-writer of Before You Judge Me, The Triumph and Tragedy of Michael Jackson's Last Days. Tavis, you talk about these self-inflicted wounds. You talk about them in your book. Michael Jackson settled one child sexual abuse case out of court, was acquitted in another. And in your book, you talk about these self-inflicted wounds, but it stops there. So, it's the obvious question. Why didn't these cases play more of a role in the story that you choose to tell about them? Because they are important things for everyone to understand who he is.
Yeah, the story that I chose to, it's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. The story that I chose to tell is the story of these last 16 weeks. Again, for those who may have just tuned in, the book starts with Michael in London making the announcement, I'm coming back one more time, this is it, announcing those shows, initially 10 that grew to 50. Our story starts in that moment as he's doing everything he can to balance this drug dependency with this dogged, determined, deep desire to get back on stage where he belongs. He's trying to navigate these two worlds, these two issues. And so our story is the human drama of Michael Jackson, the world's greatest entertainer, doing everything he can to get back to center, to get back on stage. It's just the last 16 weeks, and I wanted to get inside his world to see what was happening. I started this book with a central question. Why are you gone so soon? Because I was gobsmacked like everybody else that he died so suddenly at 50. So my question is, why are you gone so soon? When I got into the research, the question became, it actually did a 180 on me, not why are you gone so soon, but how did you survive this long? So the reason why we don't go deeper into the question you asked is because it's not covered in our timeline.
Okay. Most recently, we've seen police documents, you've seen them, that detail a volume of pornographic material authorities that is believed that Jackson could have used to, I think the language is, groom children for sexual assault. And yet your book is called Don't Judge Me, Before You Judge Me. And I guess, I'm kind of stuck on what are you asking me not to judge?
Sure. Let me explain very quickly. It's a beautiful question. Let me explain very quickly the title of the text. It's called Before You Judge Me. In one of Michael's songs, specifically the song Childhood, not one of his better-known songs, but a powerful song lyrically. And I invite readers to go online and just read the lyrics to that song, Childhood. But there's a line in the song, Peter, that says, before you judge me, try hard to love me. Before you judge me, try hard to love me. I think that's something that's a mantra, not just for Michael Jackson, but for all of us. Can you imagine how differently Canada, the U.S., the world would be if we took on that mantra individually, that we would try to love folk before we judged folk? And again, when folk become icons, we can see their iconography, but we lose sight of their humanity. So Michael Jackson is human. He's not human and divine. He makes mistakes. To your specific question, I was not in Michael's bedroom any more than you were. I do not know what happened. What I know is that in this country, we have a system of jurisprudence that demands that when a suit is filed against you, when you are prosecuted by the state of California, you go to court. That's what Michael Jackson did. And in a court of law, Michael Jackson was acquitted, number one. Number two, the jury saw the evidence or the material that you referenced earlier. The jury, according to Michael's lawyer, saw all of that during the trial, and they still acquitted Michael Jackson. So they followed this case every day, and whatever this evidence was, it apparently was not serious enough for them to do anything other than acquit Michael Jackson. Number three, you have to believe, I certainly do, that if Tom Sneddon, the DA at the time, now dead, but if Tom Sneddon had that material, he certainly would have used it. You would never convince me that with the vendetta, Tom Sneddon went after Michael Jackson on more than one occasion. So you're going to tell me that he had that data, it was that damning, and he didn't use it in the trial? Not going to buy it. Number 4, Michael's fans didn't trust Tom Sneddon or the police investigators then, and they don't trust Tom Sneddon or his investigators now. Number 5, I don't believe this data is changing anybody's mind. If you think Michael Jackson did it, you still think Michael Jackson did it. And if you think Michael didn't do it, you still think he didn't do it. And finally, Michael Jackson is not here to respond to any of this. I ask rhetorically, can you kill a dead man? You certainly can, because a dead man doesn't have the agency to speak for himself. And finally, there are other folk in this industry. You went there, so I'm going to go with you now. There are other folk here in this industry. Hear me on this. There are other folk in this industry who are accused of having done the same thing that Michael Jackson was accused of. And they still work in this industry. They still direct films in this industry. Every major celebrity still wants to work with them on their films. There are other people who left the country 50 years ago, refused to stand trial.
Without naming any names, yeah.
And won't come back to stand trial. All I'm asking is this. What is the standard? Everybody wants to demonize Michael, and I'm not suggesting Michael was perfect. All I'm asking is, what is the standard for who we celebrate and who we denigrate? America has a funny way of deciding who gets off the hook and who we want to demonize. And I don't like that inconsistency. I think it is hypocritical.
Okay, thank you for doing that list for me. I just before I let you go, you raised it earlier about your friendship with Prince, and you were, and you know, there as you've laid out, and as we all know, there are some parallels in the deaths of these two icons in terms of them both dying from drugs. But you had such a close relationship with Prince, and you were with him just after Michael Jackson's death in 2009. And so when you think about these two men, what is going through your mind? Is there stuff going through your mind about the similar ways they were celebrated for the musical genius, the similar ways that they died?
Yeah. Beautiful question. You mentioned that I was with Prince after Michael died. I was. Prince was at his Paisley Park Studios in rehearsal to headline the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland. When news came that Michael had passed away, he canceled rehearsals, sent his band home, and literally locked himself down for days in his bedroom. He didn't come out. He didn't talk to people. Again, Michael and Prince are musically connected. Back in the day, you know, we had this raging debate. Who are you with, Michael or with Prince? Michael or Prince? So they're connected, even though they never performed or worked together. They are the two most significant artistic geniuses of their generation.
They were supposed to work together, weren't they?
They were on a song called Bad. Quincy Jones, the great impresario, my friend Q, tried to get them together, and long story short, when Prince realized that there was one line in the song, one lyric that belonged to Michael, Prince was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And the line in the Bad song, if you know the song, and most of his fans do, of course, the line is, your bud is mine. And Prince is like, that's Michael's line? So Michael is going to say to me in a video that your butt is mine. Prince told me, no, Tavis, my butt is mine, and I'm not going to hit Michael Jackson. So other than that little funny story, Prince and I in 20 years, never spent any real time talking about Michael. When Michael is dead, Prince locks himself down, as I said. He finally emerges days later, calls me and says he's going to Montreux. Did I want to go? I said yes. Hopped on a plane, flew to Montreux with Prince, and saw him perform there. He slayed the show, as he always did, of course. And about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, he and I sat up outside his hotel room on the balcony of his suite overlooking the Swiss Alps. And Prince talked from about 2 a.m. until the sun came up. And most of that conversation was about Michael Jackson. It was surreal for me to be in that moment here listening to this artistic genius talk so movingly about this deceased artistic genius.